All right, good day, gents, and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name is Jody Sedrick, and every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And my fun the last couple weeks has just been on the road. I literally have been traveling 13 days, went down to Florida, went to North Carolina, and was down at Mobile Tech Expo and also went and saw some customers last week in North Carolina. And it was a great trip. But I tell you, man, being gone that long away from home, it was good to be home, to be in my own bed, to get some loves on my wife and see my kids. So, and while I was in Mobile Tech Expo, had the great opportunity to connect with our guest today, Paul Cain. He is an amazing guy. Works for a company called Brite, an automotive detailing company, and is the proud father of a baby girl. So, welcome, Paul. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. It's nice to be here.
I'm glad to have you. You and I have talked for a long time over the years, and to finally actually sit down and talk to you about being a dad I'm really grateful that you took the time. So, you and I've known each other what, about 2, 3 years now?
You 18, I believe, is when we
Yeah,
met.
so 4 years. So we're
Yeah,
yeah, we're
I showed
going.
you a picture. I even had a
Yeah,
timestamp the time and date we met each other.
that's funny, man. So well,
hmm
it's an honor, and it's been fun to watch you over the years grow and become the man that you are. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about being a dad. You have one daughter. She
One.
is how old?
7 years old.
7 years old. So you're
Yep.
in that stage where she's out of toddlers. She's getting to be kind of independent, she's starting to get to her own. I mean, they always have their own personality, but I think they're at 7, they're becoming more cognizant of who they
hmm
are.
Yeah, totally different facial expressions, their attitudes, their voice is starting to change. They're making hand expressions. It's really a fun time.
Yeah. So what's fun about it?
She's turning into being like my little best friend. We can actually go and do stuff now, and I can watch her go and have fun without being scared. So she can, let's say it, being a man taking your daughter out. I can watch her go in the restroom, stand outside, and not worry about it. I no longer have to hide her and take her into the men's room. Things like that. I mean, it's at that fun age where you can have a really good time with
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting point. I never you never really think about it until it happens to you. When they're toddlers,
her.
it's like they gotta go to the bathroom, you just take them in with you. But they
Not
get
a
to a
big
certain
deal.
point where you have to have the trust and the confidence that they can go in the bathroom and actually take care of themselves.
Yeah, I
And
remember
and that's
go ahead.
go ahead. No,
Well,
go ahead.
traveling all the time, it happened to me where I she said, "Dad, can you take me to the bathroom?" Because we're in a pretty busy restaurant, and I'm like, um, I looked at my wife and I'm like, "Can you please take her?" And she's like, "Well, she can go herself. She just needs you to stand outside." And I'm like, "Wow, I'm gone that much. I didn't even realize that kind of stuff was happening."
So
So
I take it, and I know the answer to this, but really for those listening, so are you on the road quite a bit?
I am. I don't travel as much as I used to, but I am gone daylight to dark probably 5 days a week. Easy. I mean, I my day usually starts at about on the road at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes I could get home, get lucky at 5, or sometimes I could be home at midnight. It just kind of depends on how I want to work it.
So let's talk about that. What kind of challenges does that pose, being a dad and being on the road?
Um, a lot of that's well here lately. It's been kind of it's not been as hard because they've been going with me a lot. So that when we went to Mobile Tech, they came with me. They obviously went
That's
to
nice.
Disney, and I went to Mobile Tech. But I mean,
Yeah.
but other than that, when she was young, it was really hard. It was a lot of stress on my wife, a lot of stress. I mean, she's a careered woman herself, so she kind of had to give up a lot for me to do this job.
Yeah, so and that's kind of a delicate balance, right? Because on one hand, you're working, your wife's a working mom, you're both trying to figure out how to create this delicate balance between being parents, being driven by your career, and trying to find that balance between all of that can be quite an interesting challenge. So, how have you and your wife kind of worked through that?
Um, that's a good question. It's kind of really in the beginning. It was really hard. There was a lot of struggles and a lot of fights because I kind of left her on her own. I felt bad about it. I mean, no one can't say that I wasn't a good dad. I always came home every night. And I had night duty, and my wife had day duty, and it's just always kind of been the way that it was. But I have missed more than I probably should have, and that's kind of bothered me here lately. Like today, um, they're so used to me not being there because of things happening that, like for instance, they were going to have basketball games today, and I wasn't going to get to go. And she was like, she goes, "It's fine." I felt really horrible about it, but she started really kind of bringing me back to, that your job's important. You make a difference in people's lives and stuff like that. My daughter loves my job, so that's a good thing. She likes to travel with me and go and do stuff and meet all my friends and things like that. I was going to walk around the show, but Epcot was more important.
Yeah, and it's kind of ironic because when we were down in Orlando, it wasn't sunny Florida. It was kind of
Cold.
chilly and cold and rainy, and I'm like, and it helped the show because I think a lot of people actually went to the show instead of escaping to Epcot or Disney. But there are the diehards like my family would have been like yours. Yeah, we're going anyway.
Yeah, they put on hoodies and t like because we came from the cold. To them, it
Yeah.
was warm, but to me, it was kind of a bummer. A few years go down, and you don't, you're used to always being in the warm when you get down there. And I think when we left, it was 30 degrees.
So let's talk about being a dad of a one kid. That's kind of a different thing. I have a really good friend. He was the only child, and on one hand, it creates really resilient, really mature kids because they're always around adults.
Hmm.
Um, so, how have you kind of figured out a way to create that balance where she's the only, but also give her opportunities where she can be around other kids and learn how to really socialize? And obviously, COVID has thrown a wrench in things the last couple of years,
Yeah.
but how are you guys balancing that dynamic?
So at a young age, we found that to be a big problem. Like you said, she was an only kid. She started having tiny, just little behavior problems. We kind of noticed that she would just try to befriend anybody. And when we had kind of talked to other people, they're like, she's an only kid. First off, she's used to conversations with adults. So the really good thing is my wife, we live on a bunch of different land very close to each other. Her whole family does. And they all have a lot of children and stuff. And she really works hard to get her around all of her cousins. She spends a lot of time with them. She takes her anywhere. She tries to do things with her where there's a lot of children so she can interact with them and stuff. Helps a lot that her family members are teachers and stuff and have helped us with different exercises on how to do things. Um, and really, here lately, the hardest thing, and it's because of COVID, really took it over, was her living online. So she seems to kind of had a little bit of issues getting back into the world of being around other children. She's a little too. In the beginning, I kind of seen her getting bullied a lot because she didn't really know how to interact with other kids. But it seems like she's kind of coming back out of it now. Things are starting to get a little
Yeah.
bit better. Yeah.
And that's an interesting dynamic about COVID, right? We've moved to so many Zoom meetings and teaching and being, have remote learning and stuff. And it's going to be interesting to see how our kids move throughout the world. And a lot of times I look at it and I'm like, look, I think a lot of times we as dads go, well, they're spending too much screen time. They're not really interacting with kids. But when I listen to my son in his room playing with all of his friends remotely playing these games, they're interacting. They're like watch your back, I got your six. They're
Hmm.
really interacting. They're just interacting in a different way. And as I've looked at kind of the last 2 years with COVID and how we've done business differently, how we've learned differently, how we've interacted as families differently. I've asked myself, all right, what is this season of our life? What is it preparing us for in the future that we can't see?
Hmm.
Right, right. And it's kind of a challenge because we're from an era where in my house, we had an hour limit on TV. I mean, that was our screen time. My mom was like, "Go out and play, go out and explore, go out and
Hmm.
build." Right? And now we have kids that, yeah, they have interest in doing that, but there's so many interests that are available for them online, for them to learn, to grow, to interact, to experience in different ways,
Hmm.
that I think it's easy to look at it as a negative, you know, because it's not the way we did it. Instead of going, oh, you know what, this is embracing this as a new way of moving throughout the world.
Yes, I do believe it's important. I don't believe it's important. I believe it's very, very important. I was just saying that, like, the one thing that I noticed was my daughter was in kindergarten, learning how to be around a lot of kids at once, learning how to create friendships and stuff, and then the pandemic hit. So she went through that year and a year and a half of when she was online. When you're on when you're not face to face with somebody, you really kind of don't get what they truly are, what they look like. I mean, look at us. We're looking at each other from the chest up.
Yeah.
When you first look at people, you get that first thing. Like, I've met people that I've done Zoom calls with and stuff, um, to where um, I met some of them at Mobile Tech and was like, "My God, you're 6'5". You don't, totally. But it's so crazy. We remain friends to now. I mean, we became friends, but we became better friends meeting in person. But it was just strange that how an online persona is a totally different persona than what somebody really is. I mean, but that's
Yeah.
that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah,
People just
that's funny because it reminds me, when I was a senior, you had the senior pics that you sent out to everybody, and all the senior pics back in 1983 were from the chest up. And I remember going to my great uncle's house in Missouri, and I'd never met them. And I came, knocked on the door with my grandma and stuff, and he goes, "Wow, I thought you were going to be bigger. You're a little dude." Right. And so that perspective is really interesting. Um, and, I think about it too. When back in the day when I was in radio, you would hear people on the radio, and then you'd meet them in person. You're like, that is not anything like I
yeah,
imagined you to be, right? And
yeah.
and even with Zoom, even though we can see people, there's still this interesting dynamic that you're still getting the Zoom view instead of, the full picture.
Yeah, like, who is this person really? And that's just kind of, and I hate to say it. I mean, they're making, that's the only thing that I can say is it seems like she's friends with all these people because she does her classes online. She's back to school now. But the funny thing that happened during the snow thing was she didn't actually have a day off school. I didn't realize that our school system doesn't do that. When it snows, they just go remote. And it's just weird that you see her interacting and
Oh,
thinking,
no snow day?
no.
I mean, I remember as a kid you were praying for a snow day. Now they
Oh, I
just
know.
go online. Oh, that sucks.
And and it just, that's kind of the thing with me is I see that and I see it kind of in a different way. I seen her interacting with all these kids and stuff, and then I see her come home from school when she finally went back, and I'm like, "So did you meet this person and that person?" And she's like, "Yeah, I don't like them. Never mean to me." So
Oh,
I think that's
wow.
but I think a lot of that has to go with a little bit of being an only child and exaggeration and everything not being exactly the way she wanted it. When
Yeah.
you're that young, when you go to school, you think it's just fun and games the whole time. But
To think about as a kid having this experience of having a Zoom classroom, and you're seeing kids interact with the teacher via Zoom, but then to
hmm
be in person, right? Because you're putting on, like, the kids are being disciplined. They're like, all right, I got it. Or they're, just
hmm
showing name or whatever. But to actually get into an environment where they're actually interacting and playing with each other,
Hmm.
That's a completely different dynamic that I hadn't even thought about. That could really throw kids for a loop because they're seeing how they're being respectful in the classroom setting via Zoom. But then when they're out in the playground or they're at the cafeteria, they're seeing how they naturally want to interact with people.
Yeah, it's like,
Hmm.
I want to sit with this person, and I don't, and but they're like, but I thought we were friends. We see it when we go to shows. I mean, we're all cordial to each other, and to tell you the truth, there's no anyone that I go to the shows that I don't just absolutely love and adore, and just can't wait to be around again.
Yeah.
Gives me motivation, boosts me up. I mean, it's almost like going to, a self help seminar. When I come out, I'm on fire, ready to go. But still, it's everybody's kind of in their own little group because everybody has their own different manufacturers and things like that. A lot of the times, with me, my company might not go to their shows, so I get to go on my own. So I get to go and just suck it all in. But no, that's just kind of how I guess I on the outside looking in, with
Yeah.
her, because I just see a lot of that, hear her talk to me about it a lot. So I think I think it's better in person. But you're right, I do see this going a totally different route, just like the snow day thing. It's like, well, we don't have to miss. We can just go right back to the way that it was.
Hmm. So, what has been the biggest challenge, of being a dad that kind of surprised you?
Um, the biggest challenge of being a dad. I thought that I put a lot of time and a lot of effort in when she was little, but finding out how much she actually needs, the older we get, how she needs me as a person to be around all the time. Like
Hmm.
like going to a basketball game, or it's just a practice. Why do I have to go to a practice? Well, it's really surprising how much different she comes out of that practice when I'm there versus when I'm
Hmm.
not there. Trying to push myself to be with her more. I think I grew up with a phenomenal childhood, a wonderful dad, and he did he it now that I when you go through it, you don't think about it. But once you go through it, you start to really think about it. I remember how much more it meant to me when my dad would be at my practices and things like that. Like those are the things now I guess I'm at the point in my life where I need to be with her as much as I can possibly be with her. Because I'm sure there's going to be
Yeah.
a time where she's not going to want me around.
That's true. She's 7. You're a hero now. Wait till she's 13. She's like, oh,
Hmm.
get out of my life.
But just
But
finding out like how it's been challenging for me when I do miss something. I just never thought that. I thought, it's no big deal, but now it's like I need to be there for her.
yeah. And I think sometimes we discount those little things, right? Those
Hmm.
little moments. But the little moments are what, especially if they're done consistently, they compound and they reinforce that dad is going to be there, that he's my biggest fan.
Hmm.
And when we can consistently be there for our kids, it builds not only the foundation of confidence in them that dad's got their back, but it also instills in them a sense of value, a sense of importance,
Hmm.
right? That somebody's taking time out of their busy day. Yeah, dad's going daylight to sunset, but yet he's making time for me. And yeah, I think all of us dads can do a better job of taking those little moments and just being there. In fact, last night we were sitting down and with me and my wife, and then my daughter came in, and she just starts going off on her day about this new boy and all excited, and then just out of the blue she goes, "My friend Lika thinks it's weird that I talk to you guys about everything."
I think it's great.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, she goes, but I like, and she goes, why shouldn't I have, I enjoy talking to them, and I know I can share anything with them, and that, as I thought about that, that the power of that for her to be comfortable enough to be able to share everything with her, and that her friends see that she has a relationship with us, that their
Hmm.
kids are going, wow, her friends are going, wow, I don't do that, what is different. And it doesn't take much. I don't think we've done anything extraordinary other than, excuse me, other than actually take the time when they want to, and even when they don't want you to be there. It's go, hey, because sometimes I know, like, I would go up to her, hey, do you want to talk? Oh, get away, dad, you don't understand, right? And I would just have to go, well, you know what, I'm here if you want to talk. And then other times, man, she would just unload, right? And just having the consistency of showing that I'm there no matter what her mood is can be a challenge, right? As a
I
dad.
hope I hope that I can do that. I mean, I hope that my
Yeah.
daughter comes to me, and I want to be open with her about a lot of stuff. I know just being a 7 year old, it's strange because I'll hear her and her mom talking in the other room, and it's like two old friends.
Yeah. No, and that's good, right? You want to create that environment, and having the blessing of having, you and your wife be able to do that, that's huge. So, what, looking back over your 7 years of being a dad, um what have you learned about yourself, and what have you learned about a dad that you think would be really helpful for other men?
Well, I mean, I've learned this. I've learned that being a dad can at some points can be the most rewarding thing you've ever done in your life, and at other points can be sometimes the saddest time of your life. I mean, it sounds unusual, but it's just you've got to be the uh, um, disciplinary, and you don't, you always thought when you were young and you seen a kid crying in a restaurant that my kid would never act like that, and then and then when you try to get on them, now that you become a dad, you're like, that's not how it works. But at the same time, it just breaks your heart when you do have to jump on them or get mad at them. And then I find it pretty difficult and hard at times that, I'm constantly scared that something bad's going to happen. I used to go through life without a care in the
Mm.
world. Now I have this person that their life is the most important life in the world. It's kind of, that's kind of the hardest thing. And when it comes to other dads and stuff, I could say don't be scared. Just enjoy it all the time. When you get these bad thoughts and feelings come over you, just try your best to level it out, look at them, and just look at it. What kind of a wonderful thing was given to you?
You know what? I'd like to explore that because I don't think anybody's ever said that. And I think there are men that have this feeling, this underlying current that they're scared.
Hmm.
So when you say that, what scares you about being a dad?
Well, I'll say a quick story and then I'll let it go. So I grew up with a wonderful father, wonderful life, and my dad got very sick when we were younger. And I was a young kid, and I guess I'm probably about 7 years old. And we went from having everything to having nothing. And I watched my dad become this strong guy to being this sick, frail guy. And I see all this stuff, and I guess it's almost like a, um, a bit of a constant anxiety of on the flip of a dime, I could my company could go under. I could lose that. Something horrible could happen to my child. I mean, it's just all these things that constantly go through my mind, and it's just not being able to provide for her like I should be able to, not be able to protect her like I should be able to, not being there when she needs me. Just a lot of things that kind of come over me. I think about it a lot. I know it sounds unusual and probably not manly, but I do struggle with that, and I believe every dad does.
No, and I love the honesty of that because I think a lot of times men are reacting out of fear, right? They lose their temper because they're fearing they're losing control.
Hmm.
They become overbearing because they're fearing that their kids are not listening, that they're not learning the lesson. And so a lot of our reactions, I think, are driven out of fear instead of out of love.
Yes, that's
And
100% true.
it's hard to discipline ourselves and go, all right, and really look at, why am I responding this way? Is it because I'm fearful, or is it because I'm disappointed? And I think most of the time it's probably that we're acting out of fear, that we're not being respected, that our kids are not hearing us, that, that we're going to lose our job. We're feeling the pressure of that. And how's that going to affect? So, how have you combated that fear as a dad?
I did it a lot before. My dad's passed away now, but he seen me early on and being a father and seen me get really irritated and mad and stuff. And he kind of was the one that had everything you just said. He kind of sat me down and wrapped that up into a ball and was just like, calm down, man. He goes, you're going to lose your temperature. You're going to lose your cool. And then all of a sudden, the sadness is going to come over you because you just overreacted and acted like a fool. He goes, so just try your best to reel it in. And when you do lose your temperature or you lose you lose your cool, he goes, if you're in the wrong, let her know you're sorry. And that's kind of what I do now. Sometimes, this morning we were on there laying in bed and watching TV, and she decided she was going to start, power bombing us and jumping on us. And she wouldn't listen. And I finally was kind of hollered at her. And I think I hurt her feelings a little bit, and I had to hug her and tell her how sorry I was. But, I wasn't mad at her because she was jumping on me. I was mad at her. I was scared she was going to knee herself in the face with one of my knees. I kept telling her she was going to get hurt. And, that's funny that we've kind of come to this part of us talking, because that's why I was mad at her. And she thought she was hurting me. And I said, no, I'm scared you're going to hurt yourself. And I noticed that's one thing about my dad would always get mad. He would get mad when one of us would hurt ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's so much power in that, because I think when I look at men who are struggling in their relationships with their kids or their relationship with their wives, at the core, if they're really honest with themselves, a lot of men are acting out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
They're acting out of a place of insecurity. And in order to combat that, we have to recognize that we need to allow our kids experiences in safe spaces, right? So what
Mm-hmm.
I mean by that is we need to allow them to jump, to fall, to, do those things and be able to do it in safe environments, right?
Yeah,
So
they
that
need to
they
learn to
can
do
learn their
dangerous things
limitations.
safely.
Exactly. That was the exact thing that I was thinking of. They need to learn to do dangerous things safely. And what that does is it puts them in an environment where they can experience the the consequences of
Mm-hmm.
making a choice. And it also gives us as a dad the confidence that they're going to be able to move through those experiences, and it allows us to be there when they need to, after they've tripped or they fell or they've succeeded, right? Because I think a lot of times, like, oh, they're going to fail. Well, what happens if they succeed?
Mm-hmm.
If they succeed, you got to be there going, yes, good job. If
You're
they
100%
fail,
correct.
then you go, oh man, all right, what could you have done differently to make that successful?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so providing those environments that enable our kids to have those experiences, but also allows us dads to step back and swallow some of our fear and give our kids a little bit of rope to grow, is exactly what both of us need.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to harden them up a little bit, but in a safe environment. And that's really the way, when you stop and think of it, for years, dads have been doing it. My dad taught me how to drive a car. And in reality, it's probably one of the most dangerous things in the world you can do. Stick somebody in a big old missile and tell them to have at it. But he taught me to do it. He taught me to do it safely.
Yeah, and we had the luxury of, we had 4 acres when I was a kid, and we would get in my dad's big old Ford truck, and we'd sit on his lap and he'd let us steer around the driveway. I mean, he was controlling the brake and the gas, but man, I can't tell you how many times we were heading towards a palmetto tree or a pine tree. He's like, whoa, 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 get back on track, right? And so, allowing us to experience, to safely experience and grow and give us that foundation, that when we were finally 14, 15, getting our driver's license, we had some pretty good confidence of being able to go in and get our license. And it all starts with dad and mom, giving them safe spaces to learn and grow and fail,
Mm-hmm.
right?
You're
And
right.
because I mean, all of us, none of us want our kids to fail, but at the same token, where do you really grow? Where do all of us grow? It's in that failure of being able to step back and go, all right, let me analyze what just happened And I think we as dads sometimes we rush to solve the problem or to heal or fix it instead of going, all right, what could you have done differently to make that successful? Or why did you end up here? So, I mean,
Mhm.
this is where you're at. Now you're facing suspension. And it's funny because I remember this very clearly. So when I was a kid, I was in seventh, eighth grade, and these two kids were about to go to blows at the cafeteria lunch, right? And they're like puffed up chest and, oh, I'm going to kick your butt. I'm going to kick your butt. And then the one kid goes, well, you can't hit me. I'm wearing glasses. So I went up and I took his glasses off. I'm like, now he can hit you. Go.
No, I will say this. I mean, this is controversial, and people can take it any way they want. But um, that's one thing when it comes to my wife that I've taken a lot from. And I mean, I grew up this way, and you grew up this way. But she wants my daughter to be a good sportsman. She wants her to do things a certain way and learn to, if you lose, you lose. And if you win, it's because you put your best foot forward and you did really well with it. And I think it's funny because now she's doing that pee wee basketball first year and everything. And we'll walk out and she'll say, Mom, Dad, did I win? And I don't really say anything. And my wife's like, no, you lost. She goes, but that should make you better at the next time. So, and I think it's good
That's
because now,
good.
yeah, now she asks for, a basketball so she can practice at home and she wants to do better. And I tell her all the time, I said, honey, it's okay. She goes, I know. She goes, I just need to practice and get better. And I'm like, that's 7. That's pretty cool. I like that you're
Yeah.
willing to, put the time in and work harder at it.
Yeah, I love that. And back to my story, it's funny because the teacher took all three of us to the principal, right? And so the principal's like, all right, you two, you're getting in trouble, and Jody, you're getting in trouble too. I'm like, wait a sec, I just took the glasses off. He goes, but you were instigating a fight, right? And my dad, when I went home and told him that I got in trouble, he's like, well, step back. What did you do to end up in the principal's office? And he made me own it, right? And I think, allowing our kids space to deconstruct the steps that they took to get there enables them to really own their decisions. It allows them to look at themselves and go, oh, yeah, I messed up here, or I could have done this better, or I did great here, right? And
Hmm.
celebrate both sides of that. And it's really important. So,
Definitely.
well, so in kind of final wrap up, if you were, you've shared the things that you've learned, but if you were gonna say just one thing, Dad, what is the most important thing that you think is important for you to do as a dad?
Well, I mean, the most important thing for me to do is to help teach my daughter to be a good, positive human being, to go through life and help people that need help, um, teach people that need to be taught, and take accountability for anything that she does wrong. I want her just to be a good person to everybody she comes across.
Yeah, and I love that, and I think the underlying message of that is you have to emulate that yourself, right?
Hmm.
Because kids are going to emulate what they see dad do. And I've seen you walk and move with people, and I can see how that would be is easy for your daughter to emulate because you're that kind of person. And I think, my dad always said, he's like, look, I just want you to be better than me. And if we give our kids a foundation to build on, they will take that foundation and they will build mansions on it, right? We just
Yes.
have to give them the tools and the character, the personal character and the fortitude to be able to move in those in that way, and the confidence that they can do that, but also give them a space where, if they do trip up, that they know that dad's always got their back and that he loves them no matter what. So,
Oh, definitely. And I do. She's my little girl.
yeah, and you know what? It's amazing what feeling you get when you just say that. She's my little girl.
Oh yeah, it did make me
I mean,
smile.
think about that. How many times when you say she's my little girl, I mean, not only does it smile inside on the outside, but it also smiles on the inside, and you can
Hmm.
essentially hear the words "I love you." And
Oh yes.
that's what it comes down to. You know what? Loving our kids, loving our wives, loving our baby mamas if you got those, and just giving our kids, the love that they need to thrive. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me. Guys, if you don't know Paul, go connect with him on Facebook. He's a great, great dad, good man. He works for Brite and is a positive influence in the automotive detailing industry and a great model to emulate in being a dad. So, Paul, I want to thank you for taking the time to visit with me. And any last thoughts or words?
I I appreciate it so much. Thank you for having me. Can I give
No,
a shout out to my daughter? Because she
absolutely,
probably want to watch
please.
this later. Well, Billy Goat, Daddy loves you.
I love that.
That's her
You
name. That's
call
her
her
nickname's
Billy
the
Goat?
Goat. Her
That
first name's
you
Billy.
call it That's
Everybody calls her the
funny.
Goat.
I
Yeah, because
love
her
that.
name is Billy, spelled like a girl, but everyone just calls her the Goat. Like, hey, Goat, and she's like, hey, how you doing? So yeah, that's been her
Boy,
nickname ever since she was a little baby.
that is
She's
cool. I
the
mean,
greatest of all times.
wow. Boy, can you imagine the confidence that gives her to walk around being called goat all the time?
Yeah, we'll
That
be all my buddies will be watching football or something, and I'll be like, "Hey, Goat, what's that mean?" And she's like, "I'm the greatest of all times." She just keeps watching her tablet.
Oh, dude, that is awesome. That is so cool, man. That is definitely setting her up for success, man. Well,
Hmm.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me. I want to wish you a happy weekend. And those of you that are listening, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And we will check you same time, same bad channel just next week. See ya.